Actually, this is kind of fun. This is a version of one of the stories that some of you just read, with the bear and the stumpy tail. Mm-hmm. Some of you might have had rabbits growing up. Yes? Anyone? Rabbits? Black and white rabbits? Brown rabbits? Does anybody have a multicolored rabbit? Purple rabbit? No? What about a rabbit with short ears?
No.
No? Long tail?
No.
Well, I'm going to tell you the story about when Rabbit used to look sort of like a giant squirrel. It's a Native American tale that tells us a little bit more about why rabbits are the way they are today. Once upon a time, Rabbit did. He looked just like a giant squirrel. He had itty bitty short ears and the biggest, bushiest, fluffiest white tail you ever saw. Absolutely amazing. Now I know squirrels don't have white tails, but Rabbit did. And he was proud of it. He pretended it was like a feather boa. He whooshed it about. He tickled people in the nose with it. He just was proud as he went around all over town. Until he met Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox was equally as proud of his tail, and it was long and red and bushy too. Mr. Fox thought he had the best tail. And they were always arguing over who had the best tail. One day, in the middle of winter, it was super, super cold. The ice was all over the road. There was piles of snow. Everybody had the heavy winter coats on. And Rabbit was hopping down the road. And he met Mr. Fox. Mr. Fox was sauntering the other way, striding along, and over his shoulder he had a stick. And on the stick he had 5 fine, fresh, fat fish. Well, at that time, Rabbit loved eating fish. And he saw those fish, and he imagined how delicious they would be. He looked at those fish and he said to Mr. Fox, "Where did you get those fish? I want fish like that. I want 5 fine, fresh, fat fish just like yours." Well, Mr. Fox said, "You want 5 fine, fresh, fat fish, do you? Well, I'll tell you how." And he whispered in Rabbit's ear and told him exactly how to catch them. He said, "Go on down to the lake. It's all frozen. You are going to have to go ice fishing." So he went on down to the lake, and he hopped out there in the middle, and he took his knife, and just as Mr. Fox said, he cut himself a hole in the ice. And then he sat there and he put his tail inside the water in the hole, and oh, it was very cold. But he was patient, and he thought about what Mr. Fox had told him. He had told him, "Put your tail in the water now and swoosh it around and wait. Now don't pay any mind to the little nibbles. No, you don't want little nibbles, because little nibbles mean little fish. And how many fish do you want?" "Oh," said Mr. Rabbit, "I want 5 fine, fresh, fat fish." "Well, then you're going to have to wait, and you're going to have to be patient. And then when you're patient, you will feel the big nibbles, and then you will swoop your tail out of that hole, and you will have fish to eat." Well, Rabbit did just what Fox said. And he sat there. Oh, he could feel those little nibbles, and it was really cold. But after a while, well, he didn't feel the little nibbles anymore. But he didn't feel any big nibbles either. In fact, he couldn't feel anything at all, because his tail had gone numb. Well, he was patient. Mr. Fox told him he should be. And so he waited, and he waited, and he waited, and pretty soon Mr. Rabbit went fast asleep right there on the ice. Well, he slept all night long. And in the morning, when the sun started to come up, Mr. Owl was flying by from his evening hunting, and he saw Mr. Rabbit and thought, "Ooh, what's Mr. Rabbit doing down there on the ice?" So he flew on down and alighted right next to Mr. Rabbit. And he pecked him on the nose, and he woke him up and said, "Mr. Rabbit, what are you doing here?" "Oh, I'm fishing," said Mr. Rabbit. "I bet I've caught something." And he went up and pulled his tail out, and he couldn't pull, and he pulled, and he pulled, but he couldn't pull his tail out of the ice. And then he began to cry, because then he realized that his tail had frozen solid in the ice. Well, Mr. Owl felt very sorry for Mr. Rabbit, and so he looked at him and he said, "Ooh, I'll help you." And so he reached out and he grabbed a hold of one of Mr. Rabbit's little itty-bitty ears. And he pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled until he had pulled the ear out all long and floppy. Well, he stood back and Mr. Rabbit was still stuck in the ice, and Mr. Owl said, "Ooh, well, you don't look very symmetrical." And so he reached back out and he grabbed a hold of one of the other ear, and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled and he pulled until at least Mr. Rabbit's ears looked the same. But Mr. Rabbit was still stuck in the ice. So Mr. Owl went round behind him, grabbed a hold of that tail, said, "I'll pull it out." And he pulled and snap. With his sharp beak, he cut Mr. Rabbit's tail right off. "Oh, well, now you're free," he says. "Ooh, have a good day to you." And he flew away before Mr. Rabbit realized what had happened. Pretty soon, of course, Mr. Rabbit realized it. And so there it is. From that day to this, Mr. Rabbit had 2 big, long, floppy ears and a little fluffy bunny tail. And as far as I know, from that day onwards, Mr. Rabbit never ate fish again.